Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for taking the time spending with us today. Quick introduction, I'm Kevin Barboza. I'm a partner at EY, and one of my remits is to bring technology innovations in the area of data and analytics and help our clients scale them to large business transformation programs. Given the time slot of this chat and the amount of presentations you've seen today, we thought we'll do something different. Rather than having a bunch of slides scroll through, we thought we'll have an informal chat about two topics and the journey we've been through with Merck, specifically in the area of how do we scale AI-driven programs and the underlying platforms centered on business value. And second is going through the journey with Merck, the benefits, the learnings, and what you can take away from it in your journey. So that's the agenda for today. With me, I'm really happy to have my friend and colleague Eric with me here today. Eric, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Kevin, and hi, everyone. My name is Eric Carlson. I work for Merck Pharmaceuticals, where our mission is to bring leading-edge science to help improve patient lives and save patient lives, especially in our verticals in vaccines, oncology, and general pharma. Specifically, I work on the commercial side of Merck, where we take the therapeutics that were developed in our research divisions and really focus on bringing them to patients and getting them into physicians' hands. My role at Merck is to develop solutions that integrate AI into decision processes and the platforms that make that possible. Previous to Merck, I've worked at Philips Healthcare, where I worked to bring AI to the bedside in their clinical decision support group, and also at Goldman Sachs, where I developed large-scale data science solutions for asset management.
Perfect, thanks. So I think let's set some context to the problem. So the way we'll walk this through today is we'll share with you the context of where we started. So we started in a very discrete problem statement in the area of strategic forecasting. Like all of you know, forecasting in any industry is complex. In pharma, I would say it's nuanced, and three things that come to mind. One is around how do you forecast different therapy areas? Merck as a company has got oncology as a franchise, vaccines, its own pharmaceutical and genetic biosimilars division. How do you forecast for each of those products across 70 markets with all of the data at hand? Number two, which is a key part, is around the launch sequencing. So the kind of data that you need to forecast a products at the time of launch versus when they're a mature product is significantly different. So with those two drivers in mind, we started this program around strategic forecasting to answer two questions. Number one, how do we create a baseline of facts, of models that can be shared across different teams for oncology forecasting, vaccine forecasting, and pharma forecasting? Number two, there's a bunch of unstructured data in the ecosystem. For example, primarily in primary market research data, interviews that are conducted with different doctors, HCPs. How do we use that information in a compliant way? So those were the two drivers, which were the use case as a starting point. So Eric, maybe you want to talk about a little bit more about where we started.
Yeah, sure. So a couple of years ago, we started, and we had a growing data science team. We made investments in data, and we were pointed to the opportunity in strategic forecasting as an area that could really have a huge impact for Merck. And so to take a step back and describe that a little bit, at Merck, we make forecasts for all of our therapeutics in all markets, and that feeds into financial planning, our regulatory filings, manufacturing decisions, strategic planning, and more. So they're really critical to our company. We have several different types of forecasts that we talk about at Merck, specifically strategic forecasts that Kevin mentioned. That's really the process for products that are yet to market. They might be 2 to 5 years before they get to market, or products that might be on the market, but the market is highly dynamic. They're in a situation where there's regulatory changes that are affecting them or highly dynamic competitive environment, and so really need that higher touch feel. So a lot of these, they're dealing with novel therapeutics, or we're looking 5 to 15 years into the future where historic data or really any data is really hard to come by or may not apply very well. So we have to do a lot of focusing on integrating with human expertise and being able to integrate expert knowledge and local knowledge of local regulatory changes or competitive environments.
Yeah, and I think that point is critical around. This is a $60 billion company spread across 100 countries, each one of them doing their individual forecasting. How do we create two things, a platform and a common modeling approach across these two? So Eric, maybe you want to talk about the work. I think a lot of our audience would be interested in what actually was done over the last 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, so when we take a look at our strategic forecasting and what we wanted to do, that was really an example of just one area in Merck where this kind of approach was needed. There are many of this kind of decision process that exist within Merck and needed modernization. And as we looked at that, there were going to be many dozens of these kinds of applications. We started with the forecasting application, but there are many others beyond that. And so we really need to take a step back and think, how are we going to support this in the long term? We might be able to build this initial forecast application right now, but what are we going to do in a couple of years if we're successful, fingers crossed, and we add dozens of applications? We didn't want to be in the position where we had one team that was responsible for all of that and would be the bottleneck, couldn't scale. And so that really drove us to think about a platform approach where the team that I lead really focuses on that core platform and managing things like compliance and data availability and creating a reusable ecosystem of components. And then almost like an app store kind of an approach where we can have data scientists throughout the organization create those apps, be the app developers working with their stakeholders so that we don't have these kinds of bottlenecks. So really considering the organization from the beginning. And along with that, and I mentioned compliance, that Merck, especially as a healthcare company, but really all companies now, we really need to focus on creating that trust from our users that we're going to take care of their data and be responsible with that. And so we really wanted to make sure that was baked into the platform at the ground level. That both ensures that we are compliant and we are following with regulations, but it really unlocks and enables our data scientists that as those app teams are developing applications that launch into the platform, by making that a platform capability, it makes it so those data scientists don't have to think about compliance issues as much anymore, that they can just build their prototype, build their app, and know that it's going to launch and that those concerns are going to be taken care of for them.
And thanks for that, Eric. I think there's 2 points I think which are critical here. One is around how does creating a common platform with compliance and security managed at its core help different parts of the business build their own models and apps. And just to give you an example of what these models and apps are, when we started doing this work, we thought about models being traditional, machine learning models or predictive models. But in a lot of cases, forecasting in some of these disease areas is business logic, right? You're essentially looking at patient populations. You're essentially going through a business logic of finding patients from external data sets. That's one extreme to the other extreme, where vaccine forecasting is a completely different method of doing that approach. Having the ability of each of the data scientists which sit closer to the business, being able to create these apps on their own, build those applications, deploy them and test them. And for example, if I have a logic built for something that works in France, identifying in parallel markets in Europe, does that logic work? Can I test that logic? That was unlocking, to Eric's point, the value of the platform, of this capability. Model sharing is another big area. Some of these models were in Excel spreadsheets, in SQL scripts, as like a lot of us know. The ability to have these models exposed in a secure and compliant way to a wide variety of end users was really helpful in unlocking the value of this platform. The other thing which was, I think, critical is in a lot of cases when we look at these platform build-outs, they're always starting with POC mode. But the guardrail that we had here is this is going to be an industrial scale platform from the outset. So there was no option of building with an experimentation only mindset. We had to build with the scale of deploying this to about 70 countries in about 9 months, or 9 to 10 months. And actually using this as part of the forecasting process. So with that, Eric, with these guardrails and the fact that this capability is now live in all these markets, we've gone through one forecasting cycle using this platform. Can you share with the audience, what are the benefits that some of the clients, some of our users have seen in market and region?
Yeah, so with this approach, one huge benefit has been our agility and ability to change these models very quickly in response to changing business conditions. That previously, as Kevin said, a lot of this modeling had been done in Excel sheets and really teams of resources distributing hundreds of workbooks globally and then collecting all of that and analyzing it. And so you can imagine that any major change, it can take many, many months. In some cases, we've had changes that were required by the business and very urgent, but just the build would have taken 9 months. And now with our new approach, we've been able to do that in the matter of weeks. So that's been really a huge benefit. Another is the ability for users to really touch the system and have that streamlined user experience and workflow that they come to expect from modern consumer websites. So we have that both from the in-market forecaster, the in-market analyst, who's really appreciating that they can go in and move a slide or enter data and immediately see the model update because everything is executing so fast now. And then also on the other end of the spectrum in our executive teams, that for the first time things are usable enough that they can actually go in and ask questions of the system and get answers that they can understand. They don't need teams of data scientists in between them and the underlying technology. So that's been a huge benefit. And then lastly, again, with the agility and kind of the democratization of the build, that we've been able to allow data scientist teams to create applications very quickly on our platform and deploy them quickly for their users. So we had a really nice example of this recently where one of our businesses had engaged with a vendor and following the traditional model, they had built the Excel spreadsheet. That was kind of their full application. They're going to distribute that to all countries this fall. And they had plans maybe by the end of next year to try to modernize it, bring it on the cloud, and have some of those advantages. Within a week of meeting with them and learning about this opportunity and what they were doing, we were able to work with them and get a full prototype within a week launched to our platform that was fully functionally complete. And so we're going to production with that in a few weeks now, and basically advancing their roadmap by about a year. So that's been really a huge advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the speed at which we've been able to help move, some of our clients, some of our customers, along with the trust factor that what's coming out of these models actually works, has been a pretty critical outcome. In a lot of cases, when we have end users transitioning from their own methods of working to a new technology, the explainability of the model, the ability for of the UI of the user experience to show how an output is being generated, the auditability and the traceability of what dial, which variable in a forecast changing has caused what output change, that's been pretty beneficial to a lot of the audience here. So Eric, as a lot of our clients in the industry look towards digital transformation in this area, specifically around forecasting, building platforms, what are some of the learnings from the journey that we've been through that you'd like to share with some of the audience here?
Yeah, so one is really that compliance aspect that oftentimes, I know myself as a young data scientist, I viewed those kinds of concerns as a little bit frustrating and they were slowing me down. But if you could really bake it into the platform at the low level, it really accelerates your teams because they don't have to think about that. They don't have to ask questions for every little project. That you have very bright lines of what's allowed, what's not allowed in approval processes. And once you establish that, it's really an accelerator. So it's really helpful to flip that mindset. Another aspect is that focus on the user experience, thinking through how are our algorithms going to fit into the business process, and what's the full end-to-end experience of the users. I first learned that lesson really at Philips, where I joined the clinical decision support team, and over time we had a few dozen algorithms for detecting various kinds of patient deterioration or providing therapy guidance, but they were all single point solutions, and they didn't really fit into the clinical workflow. They were often used in special cases that didn't come up very frequently, and so they just weren't part of natural use. And so by stepping back, we were able to really think through an end-to-end solution and fit it into that decision process. And we're seeing that at Merck right now. We're seeing this end-to-end solution.
Yep, and I think as we look to the future, there's a lot of conversation today about Gen AI, using large language models at scale. As we look to the future, Eric, and having this foundation set up, the trust of your stakeholders set up, what do you think the future looks like?
Yeah, so for us, we have a couple near-term wins that we're excited about. One is overall connectedness and connectivity. So both from a data perspective, where we're starting to turn some of these processes that had been manual and performed a couple of times a year, we're making them connect to real-time data streams and being able to be continuous and really take actions off them. Also, connectedness in terms of functionality, where we've had silos of, for example, our forecasting teams and our pricing teams, where the forecast might be essentially emailed to the pricing team to do their further analysis, when in reality, pricing can affect the forecast and demand, and we haven't been able to have that connectedness. So for the first time, they're able to actually interact. Another aspect has been simulations that for our forecasts right now, they're mechanistic models. So really being able to think through what does the next gen look like? Is it going to be agent-based models or some other aspect? And then lastly, of course, generative AI. We're extremely excited about that. And we're excited about the foundation that we have in compliance, that we're able to have training data and production data where we've already taken care of the compliance layer, and we're able to feed that in, and the generative AI is able to make use of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the similar things, Eric, that we're seeing as well, from an external EY perspective in the market, I think there are some things as we look to the future, there are some things which are table stakes, right? Finding the right business sponsorship, which in your case, was pretty strong coming up from the HSDDA leadership. Finding the right use case, in this case, was commercial forecasting. It was ripe for disruption, both from a modeling perspective and a technology perspective. And then the third part is around learning and upskilling talent. So these three things are the common table stakes which all of us know about. But there are three things as we look forward to incorporating AI and generative AI with some of these capabilities which are pretty relevant. Number one is there is a pretty unique opportunity with Gen AI to bring your business stakeholders along with the journey to actually understand so that they can touch and feel the outputs of the models. In the past, we've built mathematical models, statistical models. You've needed to expose them through dashboards and other means for your business users to find value. Let's take advantage of the opportunity at hand where your business users can touch and feel the models, and you can actually pinpoint and try to find where you need investment to actually improve and scale those models. Second is around building trust. We're seeing a lot of our stakeholders experiment or clients experiment with generative AI and AI models. But where we are seeing real value is like in our case, where you are actually able to combine the outputs of a generative AI model or an AI model, but stitch it together with an authoritative source so that your business stakeholders know that they are building trust with the model, and over time have better confidence in the outcomes of that model. So that hybrid approach and building trust incrementally is what we are seeing as a real opportunity. And the last thing which you pointed out, obviously, Eric, I'll reiterate it for the audience, is experience matters. For somebody who's a forecaster in country, in region, in market, they're more focused on making the right capital allocation decisions, the right marketing, allocating the right marketing spend. Gen AI and AI are one capability in the toolkit that we've got to stitch together with the right experience like you shared. So I think we're just about time. So maybe to close, memorable moments, Eric, for the last couple of years as we have scaled this capability?
Yeah, so really seeing the excitement in our stakeholders' eyes that they've been so used to Excel and a certain way of working over the last many years. And so seeing them connect with what we're able to deliver and with our data science team and other collaborations in our group, it's been really exciting. And seeing their mindset shift of understanding now what's newly possible and engaging with us on next applications.
Got it. Awesome. So I think as we wrap, some collaborations like these have a real opportunity to not just change an organization's trajectory, but also look at it from an industry as a whole. So with that, thank you very much, Eric, for your time. Thank you for the audience for being with us today, and we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.